Welcome to the Wild Type Podcast. I'm Lyssa's Lizards.
I'm Neptune and Chameleon.
And we're your reptile girlies. Happy Tuesday.
Happy Tuesday.
Favorite day of the week. And I have been tracking my weeks like crazy.
Yes. So this is funny because we obviously talk. I mean, I feel silly to say outside. Obviously, we talk outside the podcast.
Of course.
So we have a plethora of things we'll just be gabbing about, either like over text or in person. And so you've had your Oura ring, which came up in our like ring episode.
Yes.
But like you sent like a screenshot of like everything that you can see with it.
Yes.
And as someone who is team Apple Watch.
Yes.
But does not have an Oura ring, and Apple Watches came out prior to Oura rings.
Yes.
Or at least the popularity.
Yes.
I don't know when they actually like
I don't know what the
out,
time frame is. I've had I joked that I've been tracking my weeks because that's something we've been talking about a lot. I sent the screenshot and I've had my Oura ring for about, I want to say 2 years now.
A good chunk.
Good chunk, but I only really started utilizing it to like its fullest potential ever since like getting off birth control and trying to figure out my like endometriosis stuff. And so now I'm tracking it like crazy with everything. And I'm actually utilizing more than just the Oura Ring app. I'm utilizing a couple of other apps.
Yeah.
And so it's been really eye-opening.
Everyone raves about the Oura ring.
Yes.
Like I don't know anyone who's like, meh.
No,
don't really like it.
No.
Everyone raves about it.
I will throw this out there too, though. And this was something I was going to tell you over text message, but then we decided to talk about it on the pod. So now here we are. But there's now the Oura Ring was the first of its kind that like did something like that. Now there's another one that I've heard about that is cheaper and doesn't require a subscription for stuff.
Oh.
So I actually I've had my Oura Ring for so long, but if I were to do it again, I might consider getting this other one, which is called Ultra Human.
Okay.
It's called an Ultra Human ring.
I'll look into it.
Yeah. So I'm just saying, if you're going to get one, compare both. And I can obviously give you a lot of info about the Oura Ring, but I've heard and looked up a lot of good stuff about the Ultra Human one too. So just throwing that out there.
Yeah.
But it's so cool because it takes your natural body temperature, or I forget what it is, like your internal body temperature exactly. And that helps tell you where you're at in your cycle.
Crazy.
Which then goes into one of my other apps, the Natural Cycles app, which again gives me more data and more info. And the Oura Ring can also, it tests like your heart rate. So it'll give you certain stress levels. So I can literally look at a graph.
That's what I need in my life.
Yes.
So it can be off the charts. And I'm like, I know. You don't need to tell me that I'm stressed right now. I already know.
I can feel it in my heart. It's happening.
Or I'm also interested in like sleep data.
Yes. Okay. So that is also huge for the Oura Ring.
Yes, because the Apple Watch does track sleep data, except for the Apple Watch battery is kind of, you have to charge it every day. So if you wear your Apple Watch all day, and I usually do a workout, which like obviously takes more battery power, whatever. Yeah. So by the time evening hits, it's time to charge my, it's at like 8% or something. So I can't sleep with it. So I have to recharge it so I don't get that sleep data. The times I fall asleep on my couch though, and my watch still has a little bit of life yet, it'll be like this much REM sleep and this much. And I'm like, this is so interesting.
So speaking of battery life, I put my ring on the charger every time I shower, and which is like every day. So like every day I put it on the charger for about 15 minutes, and I rarely have to skip a night where I don't get my nightly sleep data.
That's really nice.
So the battery life is actually pretty sick. It's pretty solid.
I'm realizing I could probably be charging my Apple Watch while I shower, and I don't do that.
That is definitely also a key.
I just stick it on my bathroom sink, and my charger is like obviously not there. So
it's worth doing that because that's where I keep my ring charger in my bathroom. And
I definitely need to make the switch.
Yeah.
No, that's so nice. But I would love the sleep data. I just want numbers. I love seeing. You're
a data-driven girl.
Yes, my Apple Watch will tell me like what side I prefer when walking. It'll tell me like what my cadence is like going up and down stairs. Like
okay, see, this does not give that. So I will say I do think that the Apple Watch does a lot more for like workouts and activity. I don't think the Oura Ring does as much of that.
Sure.
But but again, for me personally, the whole reason I got it was because I wanted to track my sleep data and I wanted to track my stress levels and my cycle. And so that to me was more so the reason versus like workouts and stuff. But that's fascinating that the Apple Watch does that too.
It's really detailed with that. And obviously tracks your workouts, which I like love seeing, and then your heart rate as well. But then it also obviously gets all your like emails and messages and phone calls. And so I like that.
But I hate that. And that's why and I think that's like an interesting factor if you're like looking to track any of like your body stuff. Like for me, I get overwhelmed by my phone these days because my whole job is on my phone. Yeah. So I'm now at a point where like if I get one more notification, I will lose my damn mind. So because of that, what I like about the Ring is I only get that information when I choose to go into the app and check it.
Sure.
So that for me, that's a benefit. But I know for other people, the Apple Watch is the benefit.
And
for
I've had my Apple Watch for over 10 years now. So it's like,
wait, that makes me feel so old. I didn't know that the Apple Watches had even been around that long.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because not to date myself, but got mine back in college. So
I've so insane.
Had my Apple Watch for many years.
I'm actually like really shook by that. I didn't know they'd been around that long. That makes me feel so old.
Long time.
Wow.
So my routine is very much like integrated with an Apple Watch. So I like getting the notifications.
Totally. Yeah.
Because I'll be mid-task. I'll get a notification. I can glance of like, do I need to shift task? Like, do I need to respond to this? Or can I stay on what I'm doing and then address that later on? And my brain does an okay job of like
figuring that out.
Yeah, and I'm very particular about what I get notifications on and what I don't. And avid fan of the do not disturb feature. Because if I'm in the zone, even getting those notifications will distract me. So I just put my phone on D&D and then I'm just like, honed in.
Yeah. No, it's just like I love looking at it. I love knowing like when things are coming up in my body, like when things and it's
dude, you want to be educated.
It's fascinating as a former party girl, a recovering party girl. It is fascinating how much one singular martini will impact my sleep. I can literally go and look at my recovery time, which is like what they give.
Yeah.
It is one drink will make it to where my body is a 10 times harder recovery for like after sleep. It is insane.
So you're like, do I want to order that drink?
Literally.
Or not? Is it worth the recovery time?
Literally.
Or not?
And then I think back to my 20s where I used to pound like 8 to 10 rum and cokes in a single night.
With lime. It's fine.
With lime. I appreciate that you still remember my tried and true drink order.
It's fine. Yeah, I've ordered you quite a few.
Yes, you have.
Over the years, especially for birthdays. But no, I wonder too what your recovery time would be in your 20s versus in your 30s.
I would like to know that too.
Because like age is definitely going to play a factor. Also like now your body's not used to alcohol consumption versus in your 20s it was like such an integral part of your routine that like no way to, like hindsight is 2020, but like it would have been very interesting to see the comparison of like that lifestyle at that time, that age
100%.
Versus obviously today. So
no, if the Oura Ring would have been out, I probably would have gotten it a long time ago because I just again I like having it to where it's a consistent thing that I wear every day that doesn't like ping me all the time. Yeah, I love it, and I did have a brief stint with the Fitbit. Back in post college, I did have like a Fitbit for a little while, but I hate having anything on my wrists for that long. It's like a sensory thing. I like can't handle it. Yeah. So I do a lot better with the rings. But.
I wore watches daily prior to my Apple Watch, and then I had the conflict of okay, I can't wear my Apple Watch and my cute fossil watch or whatever, and so I'm like. I want the stylish of my like cute watch that I picked out and like saved up for and whatever, but I really like the rings of my Apple Watch, and so and they now have like cute trendy Apple Watch bands. This is back when they just had like
nothing,
the silicone vanilla band and whatever.
It's just I've thoroughly enjoyed it. If you're one of the girlies who is like on a wellness journey or trying to figure out anything with your body, with your cycle, whatever, highly recommend either I like the Oura Ring, but I would be interested in the future to try out the Ultra Human one too because I've heard good things. Yeah. So, but in general, I'm kind of like obsessed with the cycle tracking like apps right now. One of the ones I'm really liking is called Stardust, and it literally tells you where your cycle is with the moon phases, which is really cool.
So up your alley.
I know. I love it's so cool. So every day, like I'm coming up on the full moon, and I'm like very excited to see where my cycle's at. So it's super fun. So it helps me learn my body and figure it. And that was the whole purpose of like this whole journey for me. So.
And if Oura Ring or Apple wants to sponsor the podcast,
that'd be cool.
Please let us know.
Hit us up.
You reach out to us via email. We'd love to work with you.
I mean, we did just give them a ton of free advertising.
That's why I'm like, discount code? No, I'm just kidding.
No. It's been really cool though. It's just been a fun part of my journey. I literally every morning the first thing I do is look at those apps. I check it all out.
Yeah, because then you just know for the day of like where
my body's at. Yeah, and
fantastic.
I'm trying to learn how to listen to my body and like what it's telling me, and these are helpful tools that assist with that.
Yep, so, absolutely.
Big fan. But today we were talking about vet visits.
Yay.
Vet story times, because Lord knows we have a lot.
So I do want to caveat this, that we also have on our list of episode ideas. Yes. And if you ever have any, drop them in the comments. We do want to do one in the future on like vet visit costs, because I think that would be enlightening for people who maybe don't have a reptile vet nearby or haven't been before.
Just throwing it out there, reptile exotic vet costs are different than puppy dog and cat costs.
Very different than non-exotic vets for kind of obvious reasons. So we will do a cost breakdown in a future episode, but that requires us going like deep in the receipts.
Yeah, I would have to go through many emails.
And also my brain likes to forget. It's like, it's paid, it's done. Forget about it.
It's gone. Yeah.
So this be a high level kind of our experiences, because we've been keeping exotic animals for a good chunk of time, multitude of species and a multitude of experiences when it comes to vet visits. I know your list is a little bit longer than my list.
As it happens when you have a lot of different species.
Yes. So do you want to kick off and then I'll hop in with some of mine?
Yeah. So honestly, my very first go at like vet visits in general was with Barney, my panther chameleon, and he had quite a few. I'm obviously not going to go through like every single one and go through like all the details, but we had a situation happen years ago, and I think I've talked about it briefly on here before, of basically I had an apartment where somebody in the complex was either like smoking a ton, whether that be marijuana and like tobacco as well. It was a whole slew of things that I was smelling often. And I didn't realize until after 3 different vet visits that the air quality in the apartment was the problem for him. Yep. And so everything got fixed for him after we moved, but the vet visits in particular, this was a journey. This was your first time. This was my first time. And the crazy part is we talk a lot about prep. Like when you are first getting into exotic pets, make sure that you research and look up a good vet in your area, because that's critical to have that information before getting the pet. So I had done that. I had multiple vet like exotic vets in my area listed out, but it's different when you actually take the animal to them and start getting that assessment and start learning like, oh, okay, this vet actually doesn't seem to be as, familiar with this species.
And that's the thing with exotic vets is because they basically see or could see anything but a cat or dog. Yes. Which means they could be seeing a kangaroo. They could be seeing a goldfish. They could be seeing a ball python.
A ring-tailed lemur, which I will talk about in a minute because I have also experienced that in a vet setting.
Armadillo, turtle. Like they will basically, they have the option to see birds, anything. Like you name it, anything but a cat or dog. Yeah. So your specific reptile species, one, they have to be board certified for reptiles. Yes. So maybe they see exotics, but like not reptiles. And then reptiles, they have to see your species, and then they have to be knowledgeable of your species problem, right? So like that's a lot for one person to try and be knowledgeable on. So that's why it's not enough to just have an exotic vet. Yeah. They have to be experienced in your species and then obviously be able to help with your situation.
Totally. And if I've learned anything in like all the different vets that I've seen over the years, the best exotic vets, in my opinion, are the ones who will look at the problem that you have, and they will, if they don't know the answer, they will immediately tell you so. And they will say, I've never seen this before, but I have a network of other vets that potentially will have had some kind of experience with this. So I'm going to go converse with them. I'm going to send them photos and I will let you know what I find.
Yep.
That is my favorite answer that I've ever gotten from vets. And I've gotten that numerous times because I've actually had a lot of great vet experiences. And those are the best ones. The ones who look at it and they're like, I don't know what this is, but I will do my best to find out. And I will reach out to all the other vets that I know. So anyway, so when it came to Barney, like I went through 3 different vets because I kept it basically just the problem never got better. He was lethargic. He was closing his eyes. He was like, I mean, he looked on death's door at one point. And this was when he was about 2 to 3 years old. So he was really, I think it was 2. He was really, really young. It was in his first couple years. And so it was crazy. And it ended up, long story short, after 3 different vets, nobody could figure out what was going on. We were giving him pain meds. We were doing all kinds of stuff. I ended up moving him into my office at the time. And the air quality was 100% the problem because within 1 week of moving him out of that smoky apartment, he was fine. And so, yeah. So long story short.
Lesson there.
Yeah, that was crazy. Long story short, I ended up having to break my lease. And I forced them to break it without me having to pay anything because I had put him on the lease, which was smart. That is the benefit to not lying about your pets in your apartment because he was on the lease and I had paid a $250 deposit for him. And so I basically said, hey, the pet that you're letting me have here that you took money for, I've actually spent, and I literally... You're
on it.
I gave them a list of all my vet bills and I was like, this is what I've had to pay living in your apartment with the air quality.
So yes, you will let me break my lease. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
No. So, with your Barney vet story time, I feel like you should mention the part where they didn't think that Barney was a boy.
Yeah, that was my one. I completely forgot about that. I appreciate you bringing that up because, like I said, I've had countless amazing experiences with exotic vets. I think that exotic vets are a mandatory. I think they're so important in this hobby, and anybody who like belittles or downplays vets is not a good keeper, in my personal opinion. But there are definitely some negative experiences sometimes, and this
going back to. It's a lot for one person.
Yes. And
to know everything about a singular species.
Yes. And you have to give them grace. So I can't remember if this was the second or third vet. It was not the first one. And I don't think it was the last. So I think it was the second vet that I had gone to and I was really hopeful because I had gone to my local reptile shop and I was like, hey, who do you guys take your pets to? Like which vet do you recommend? And so I went to this guy. And so I get in there and he's, looking at everything at Barney. They weighed him and he weighed, I think at the time it was like 106 grams. And what would you say is the average like for male panthers? Like how much did Neptune
I don't know.
weigh?
Neptune was like 160, 170.
See, so basically Barney was always small. And I think part of it was because we had some of these problems early on. Like, I don't know for sure, but he was always a little bit on the smaller side. His breeder said that his parents were average, but not huge. So he was just never a huge chameleon. So they took him in and they looked at his gram size. They looked at 106. And when I was telling the vet of everything I was seeing, he looked at me and he was like, so you keep saying he. Why is that? And I looked at him and was like, because he's a male. What do you mean? And he was like, no, based on the gram size, he's 106. That's definitely a female. A female is not that size.
Now, for my people who may not be familiar with panther chameleons, Barney was 2, which means he is an adult. So panther chameleons are sexually dimorphic, and that similar to peacocks, that's always the analogy I like to use.
Perfect analogy.
The males will have the very bright, colorful,
vivid
colors, and Barney was like literally blue and green.
Bright blue and green.
And then
he was like turquoise most of the time.
Yeah, and then the females will be a more duller color. Like so typically pastels. Peachy, pinky, little purpley, like sometimes a little bluey.
Sherbet kind of colors.
Yes. Yeah. Like peach color for sure though.
So basically, long story short, panther chameleons, when they're adults, you take one look at them and if you know.
From like across the room. Yeah. And you can tell if it's a male or a female.
Yes. And so this guy was looking, and I literally, when he first said this, he was like, based on his gram size, like it's definitely a female. I laughed. I didn't mean to. But it came out. I laughed.
It's so absurd.
I thought he was joking. I literally thought that he was kidding.
It's like looking at a male peacock.
Yes.
A smaller male peacock and being like, because it's smaller,
it's a female.
It's a female.
And I literally looked at him and I was like, and he was like, well, you seem really sure. And I was like, yeah, he's turquoise. What do you, and so he literally pressed me on my reasonings for why I think it was a male. And I looked at him and I was like, the breeder told me that it was a male. One, it's paid for a male.
It's so obvious.
I know.
Because breeders can get it wrong.
100%.
They can definitely get 100%. It wrong.
But it wasn't until I said, well, his colors, A, and then I said, B, the breeder sold him to me as a male. And this was also at the time one of like the top.
Yes.
At the time, it was like one of really like the only main like panther chameleon breeders. And then at the end, I was like, and I found his sperm plugs for like 6 months. So like, and as soon as I said that was when he believed me.
Wild.
And I was like, what parallel universe am I in right now?
Yes.
So obviously did not return to that vet. But that being said, he probably had a lot of experience in like other types of reptiles and this and that. So like, again, not every vet, not every person can handle all of that knowledge. That's why I highly recommend any of the vets that tell you, hey, I may not have the answers, but I have a network of other vets that I can ask and that we can talk to and we can figure this out. Yeah. Those are the right ones. But that was probably my worst experience with a vet. It was super insane. I genuinely laughed in his face because I thought he was kidding because it was so absurd.
Yes. I've had someone DM me. I get obviously a lot of messages, and a lot of them are health related questions and concerns. And someone took their chameleon to the vet. I'm getting deja vu. I feel like I've said this on the pod, but Here we go. In that they brought their veal chameleon to the vet and the vet wasn't sure if they were male or female. Oh, yeah. They pull up YouTube and search how to tell if a veal chameleon is male. It was your video? It was my video. Teaching someone how to tell the difference, which veal chameleons are even easier to sex than panther chameleons because you can tell if they have tarsal spurs right out of the egg. Yeah. Like they can be babies and you can tell this. And then as adults, they are also visually very different, so you can also tell that way. But the person watched their vet look up my YouTube video on how to tell, which was probably a similar feeling that you experienced of like, no, it's a female, and you're like, what? Why am I paying hundreds of dollars?
Oh, I left that appointment so defeated. So defeated.
Yes, and you're like, I went to you under a recommendation.
Yeah, I know. And so again, like not every person can have all of the answers. The ones that you want to go to are actually the ones that admit that they don't have all of the answers. Those are the best vets, and there are so many of them. But that was my one really bad vet experience.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I'll share one. So I, for a long time, only had 2 reptiles, Neptune and then Pluto, my crested gecko. Mm-hmm. And so Neptune one day threw up.
I forgot about this.
And it was just like this clump. And I took probably like 50 pictures of this clump of undigested bugs. And there was like a hornworm in there and like a superworm and like it was all blobbed together. And it was like very obviously like
regurgitation.
Bugs, not like a weird poop. Like it definitely came out the front end.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my gosh, like that's not a common occurrence. Reptiles don't really throw up. So like that was like a super bizarre thing. We are both lucky enough that we have very experienced exotic vets, minus that one guy, in our area. So I took him, and if memory serves, I wasn't allowed to come in to the...
Was it during COVID?
Yeah.
Oh, that's why.
So I had to sit in the parking lot and then like had to bring him in. So I literally couldn't even go into the
that's
facility.
Heartbreaking.
Yeah.
I would have freaked out.
And so I had to push to be like on the phone, like just put me on speakerphone so I can like hear what's going on, because like I may or may not have started crying in the car.
I would have
like,
too.
And even though they don't care about you, we care about them, and you want to be there for them. Yeah. And obviously it's more for us than for our reptiles, but like I was not okay, and I think they could tell I was not okay. So they're like, okay, fine, we'll put you on.
We'll cut you some slack. Yeah.
So they take Neptune in. First time for me going to an exotic vet, and for those of you who don't know, Neptune was like a very defensive chameleon. Yes, and there's a point where the vet goes, "Ow, he just bit me." Neptune never bit me, so I'm like, but I also wasn't like you were doing an exam,
poking and prodding.
Yeah. So they like want to do blood work and like x-rays and all these things. And I'm like, yes, like to all of it. Yeah. I got the vet bill. Again, we'll
do a whole
future episodes. Needless to say, that vet bill cost more than Neptune did in his like first year or two of like having him, only for them to find out that there was like nothing wrong with him.
Yeah, well, that's how I felt going to 3 different vets for Barney and spending all of that money, I think triple the amount of the security deposit that I paid on him, and still no answers.
There was a lawsuit in there that could have happened, but
but still no answers. And the only thing that eventually the answer was just moving him to a new location was crazy.
Yeah,
it was wild.
So yeah, his blood work came back. They did a fecal test and all of this. Neptune had, like, in the years I kept him, had thrown up a second time. And what I've come to realize is if he eats too many bugs too quickly, then he'll throw up.
It's like dogs.
Yeah. Anyways, so, like, especially with superworms, he'll just, like, eat one, chew it, like, and he'll just, like, take down, like, 7 superworms in, like, a sitting. And so I've learned that I need to give him, like, 2 at a time, give him some time. So, like, I've since learned that. But I think through the fecal, I think they did find, like, a very, very, very small amount of, like, some sort of parasite. But they're like, but this wouldn't be enough to, like...
I've had that happen before, too.
Like, cause anything. So, like, we'll treat this, but, like, it's not alarming. And, like, had I not taken him in... he would have been fine without it because it was such a low amount.
Low level.
Yeah. But being a new reptile keeper and first time
you freak out.
I was freaking out. I was like, what do you mean he has a parasite?
Hey, reptile girlies. By now you've heard us talk all about Scratches, the social app that helps exotic pet owners like us find their people.
You can add photos of you and all your scaly babies, set your filter to reptiles, and start scrolling through your local pet parents who get it. Think of Scratches as your way of avoiding the ever-looming, so do you have any pets question? Whether you're looking for friendship, romance, or someone who can pet sit your critters, your community is just a new match away.
Download Scratches today and start connecting with reptile keepers in your area. Available on iOS and Android.
Can we just give some love to Pangea Reptile?
I mean, always. My geckos cannot get enough of their gecko food. Mine are actually pretty picky sometimes, but mine have never turned down the watermelon and fig and insect flavors. Pangea has so many flavors that even your pickiest gecko will find one they love.
And quick shout out because it's been such a fun project to work on my chameleon kits with Pangea. We've been able to provide amazing homes for hundreds of chameleons. With everything you need bundled into one easy kit, it's your one-stop shop for all your chameleon needs.
And if that's not enough, we're always shopping their cork bark and feeding ledges too. You can find everything you need at PangeaReptile.com. This has nothing to do with vet story times, but did I ever tell you that Charlie has thrown up before?
No.
Okay, so this was way before we ever met. This was when I was in college. So when I was in college, I used to take Charlie. It was my junior and senior year of college. I could finally bring him to school with me because I had off-campus housing. And so obviously I couldn't have him in like the dorm or the sorority house. And so when I finally had a house off campus with some friends, I ended up bringing him up to school with me my last 2 years of school. And so I would take him in the car. I would put his car seat. I would put his car seat. Wrong choice of words. I would put his enclosure in the front car seat and I would kind of prop it up so that it was level and not slanted and whatever. Sure. And I would just keep a really close eye on him the whole drive. He got car sick. And so that was when I learned that before having to take him on the trips, and just to be clear, I would never recommend taking a reptile and moving them super frequently. This was like, I would move him twice a year. So it was like, there was a lot of... To school, from school. It was very like, there was plenty, he had plenty of time to like adjust and like he was fine. But he got car sick. And so that was how I learned not to feed him the night before we left.
Makes sense.
Yep. And so it was crazy because I just looked over and he hit his little head poked out of the hide. And then I looked over and I looked back and I looked back again. And there was a non-digested cricket just sitting in front of him. And I was like, you just did that. I just saw you do that.
Aren't you proud, Mom?
It was crazy. And so I pulled over into like a McDonald's or something and I was like, are you okay? But it was car sick, the poor thing.
Yeah.
And so I think after that, I started like, I think I only moved him one more time after that because I was like, I never want him to deal with that again.
Yes.
I felt terrible. So.
Yeah. So yeah, but it's not a common occurrence. No. And so it was weird. But like after they did blood work, all these things, and like besides the like very, very faint amount of like whatever, which can be naturally occurring.
Yeah. So I'll talk about my experience with that. Yeah. So there was a time where Nilla, my northern blue tongue skink, had been giving me a little bit of, not necessarily trouble, but like she was occasionally making this very strange sound that made me worry that she potentially might have some kind of upper respiratory infection. And so I wanted to bring her in, and simultaneously at the same time, Hazel, my Hog Island boa, had developed a weird little scab on her nose that I was very confused by because she wasn't a glass surfer. She didn't surf the glass of her enclosure at all. So I was like unsure where that scab came from. So I just wanted to get both of those things checked out. So I took them into my vet, which is actually my current vet now today too. And so she saw both of them at the same time. And in that instance, first off, they ruled out a URI. They looked at her lungs, saw nothing. We even did an x-ray and there was like nothing. So it was just a weird thing. And I've never really heard her make the sound again. So it was fine, but it was like consistent for like 3 weeks, which was such a weird thing. I kept hearing the sound. And then as soon as I got it looked at, it never happened again, which was so weird. But in that same sitting, they also did a fecal test with her as well. And they also found pinworms, but my vet literally told me, she was like, it's such a low level that I would not recommend treating it because that is a low level that is like healthy for them naturally that they have.
Yep.
And she was like, so I really wouldn't worry about it. She was like, if we do another fecal and if it's increased or if it's a lot more at a different time, then I would recommend treating. She's like, but right now it's so low level that I wouldn't even worry about it. She's like, this is like a natural gut flora.
Yeah. So Comet, my current foster / maybe my chameleon,
TBD. TBD.
So I didn't take him to the vet, but I did get a fecal test done, and his came back also with very, very small levels
amounts
of pinworms, and they're like, again, not worth treating, but just like FYI, we did find them.
Yeah.
So he got the all clear, but it was very similar, where like it was just like a very small amount.
It's just one of those things that I think like as you go through your reptile journey, because when you first hear that, you freak out. You know, at first you're like, why would I not treat them? What do you mean? That's crazy. And then you like start to understand like, and also it's the same reason why people worry about getting salmonella, because salmonella is naturally occurring in reptiles' guts. That's just part of it. And so, but don't worry about getting salmonella, guys. That's a myth. As long as you are practicing good hygiene and not playing in their poop and putting it in your mouth, you'll be fine. But
well, now I gotta stop doing that.
I know. But just throwing that out there, like they have stuff in their stomachs that we naturally wouldn't have. So it seems like it's alarming, but the vets know what is considered like safe or unsafe levels. So listen to your vets when it comes to the parasites.
Yep. Yeah. So, okay. So one that pops into my head for your guys was Scooby.
Yes. This was a whole situation. So Scooby.
Brand new Scooby too.
Brand new Scooby. So Scooby's my Chihuahua gecko. So he is one of the New Caledonian gecko species. And so he specifically, when I got him, I was keeping him initially in like a large quarantine tub. And so I had like a glass enclosure, but I was quarantining him when I first got him. So within the first 2 weeks of getting him, it happened so quickly. He developed this bizarre thing on his eye. It literally looked like it was like crystallized little like spots on his eye that were so concerning. And I freaked out, obviously. And so I took him into the vet, and it ended up being like such a non-issue. It was just a little bit of like a bacterial infection that had happened. And they pretty much were like, well, these guys come from like pretty humid environments. So, it can happen with humidity and things like that. And I forget what the cream was. I'll see if I can look it up and we can, put it in the show notes if we need to. But it was just a little like, I think antibacterial cream that I just put on his eye every day for about 2 weeks, and it went away. And it was a total non-issue, but it was a bizarre situation.
And for a new gecko,
yes,
that you then had to all of a sudden now handle
all the
on
time.
A daily basis. Yeah. And for those of you who don't know, New Caledonian geckos in particular tend to be a little more jumpy and kind of like quick movement. Yes. So they're not the easiest. They don't make great patients.
No, they do not.
When it comes to giving them any sort of like medicine or treatment.
No, it does not. Yeah. So I pretty much had to like learn very quickly that what his personality was like. And it's funny because now he used to be a little bit more chill. Now he's a little crazier. I think it's just happened with time and age and all that. But yeah, that was a whole process. I pretty much had to learn and sit down and be like, okay. and had to like get real close to his eye with my finger and then like just kind of dab it on before he would jump. And I would have to like measure like when he was going to jump. I learned his body language real quick. So that was a funny one.
Pro tip for anyone who's maybe dealing with like a thermal burn. We see this often with chameleons. Putting something on the end of a Q-tip.
Yes.
And then when they're asleep, going and like dabbing it can be really smart, especially if you have a naturally defensive reptile. That wouldn't obviously work if you have like a nocturnal. You'd have to do it during the day. But there are like, you can get a little creative about like how to.
And depending on what their natural day-night cycle is, right? So like, for example, Chihuahua geckos are nocturnal. So anytime I would apply the medication, I did it at like noon. I did it in the middle of their night so that they had less energy and they were more like kind of sleepy.
Yeah.
So that's the other thing. If they are, you know, a diurnal species who are awake during the day, try to do it at night. Like you said, with the chameleons and the Q-tip, like do that. But if they're nocturnal, try and give them their medication in the middle of their night, the middle of your day.
This is me making a mental note that we should do an episode on medication for reptiles, because we both have a plethora separately and together of different like reptiles do not make good patients.
No,
like,
they do not.
They don't know what's going on. Like,
oh, I dread the day that I ever have to give any of my snakes medication. I've never had to do that, thank God, and I am very concerned for the day that I have to, because that worries me.
So we'll do a future episode. We'll do a cost breakdown, and then we'll do like medications. I think that would be good. My big one, and the podcast has heard this, was last year about this time actually. I think it was
right around here.
February of 24. Neptune and Venus got into it while trying to mate and trying to breed. Venus ended up breaking her jaw. Neptune's eye ended up getting smushed, and that was like 5 vet visits, I think, in total, plus an emergency vet visit, plus a surgery. I did a cost breakdown on my YouTube channel, so if you want to go
check that out,
go see. I did break that down.
I'm not gonna lie, I think this, between the two of us, this is absolutely the most traumatic vet story time we've ever had.
Yeah, probably most traumatic. Well, there are a few, the ones that don't end well.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Those are definitely the most traumatic.
Those are different.
Which are not under discussion for today.
We are not talking about euthanasia in today's episode. No, sir.
One day, not today.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was definitely a lot, financially, emotionally, physically, recovery. That was also a situation where the vet with a broken jaw and a chameleon was like, hey, I've never dealt with this before. Let me talk to my network. There was a zoo vet
they handled that so beautifully.
Who had experience and was like, hey, what I've done previously is I suture basically like an external fixator on the jaw, and that holds it in place while the bone can heal. Reptiles are incredibly slow healers. They take forever, especially when it comes to like healing bones and such. So like that was a multi-month process. And then Neptune's eye got damaged. It immediately swelled, but then over again months ended up shriveling,
shrunk up.
And so it was just like both very bizarre situations. And not gonna lie, as a keeper who takes a lot of pride in having like good healthy care for my animals, it's hard to come to a vet and then like these guys don't know me.
They don't know,
right? And then it like made me feel like I had done something wrong, or they're like questioning my care. And it sounds so weird because I help so many keepers that their health issues with their
are drastic,
with chameleons are preventable, unfortunately, and they are care related. And so then it's like you're trying to like make sure that person feels okay, but they're like, I feel like it's my fault, and then you're kind of like, well,
I wasn't gonna say it, but
they're okay. Like it's fine, you know. And so it's hard not to feel like
totally,
like put in a position where you feel like it's your fault. And I was like, it's a freak accident, right? And so that was probably emotionally just like a very hard thing. Not to mention being in the public eye, for lack of a better way to put that, of like, hey everybody, so like I put my chameleons in this situation,
also like,
and here are the consequences.
Well, also you have to process the fact that it's like, hey, listen to my care advice, but also here's my deformed chameleon after a massive, crazy, traumatic injury.
Yes, it's just like a freak accident. So it was just like a really challenging time.
That's hard.
Plus, like, you're having to like process and deal with like your animal's well-being and like making sure they're okay and like coming to terms with like they now have permanent like scars and like damage that may come with that. And like I was the one that put them in that situation, even though I didn't cause it. Like I still feel like I contributed in like some way. So it was just a lot, but like very grateful to have a 24-hour vet, like an emergency vet, even though their advice was like, bring her back in the morning. And I was like, okay. But at least like she got seen and she got pain medications and she got antibiotics. So like, even though her poor little jaw was still messed up, but she had pain meds and like that was important for me because reptiles can't tell us that when they're in pain the same way that like cats or dogs can. So it's on us to like advocate for them.
Totally.
Yeah. And then like Neptune's whole thing that took multiple visits and like thought it was getting better, but then it wasn't. So then he had to go to a different vet and try a different medication. And then like it still ended up like just having damage to it and whatever. So I think I've hit my quota, fingers crossed, for vet
issues. Yeah, no, it's a lot, 100%. It's like I'm looking at all my lists and I'm sitting there and I'm like, wow, I have some vet trauma too.
Yeah, it's a lot. And a question people ask often is like, do you need to take your reptile to the vet on an annual basis? Because with cats and dogs, like they do need their vaccines and everything. So reptiles, generally speaking, as long as they're healthy, don't need to see a vet.
My thought process is it's really important to at least attempt in your, like, if you are starting out and you're getting like one reptile, I would maybe in the first 6 months of having them, find a vet that you think is good, talk to them, take your reptile for like a checkup or get that first initial fecal test. Establish the relationship. And like, I do think it's great if in the first year of getting a new pet, getting a new reptile, getting a fecal, just...
Fecals for sure are good best practice. And I would say even sooner than...
I agree. I'm cutting some people some slack. That's all I'm trying to do.
No. But just... Because then it's peace of mind. So then if something happens and they start acting weird, then you know that like...
It's also like a baseline. You know, and you can point back of like I could tell you, as of 2022, whichever one of my pets was clear of parasites. So if something's changed in the last 3 years, like it's like, but having that like baseline of like when they were parasite free is really helpful.
Yep.
Or if they have underlying pinworms and it's not something you have to worry about, but you have that baseline. So I think establishing the relationship in the first year or so is really important.
I'd agree with that.
And then just making sure that you do. I personally think that getting fecal tests is more important than having like an annual checkup. Just because the fecal will tell you a lot more than just a checkup will.
Yeah, and a lot of vets will do fecals without having to see the animal.
Yes.
Now, if something pops up on the fecal,
then they usually want to see the animal.
Yeah. Yeah, but that can be good, especially if you have a reptile that doesn't do well with being like transported.
Or handled,
But we're going on a tangent. What else is on your list?
So the only other one that I had was actually when I had to have a surgery on one of my pets.
Speaking of,
which was insane. So very similar, very like traumatic situation. So, and unfortunately this is one that didn't end well. The surgery went well, but both of these geckos did end up passing later on. But basically, so I had satanic leaf-tailed geckos. Their names were Draco and Drusilla. We've talked about them.
That went on the very long road trip to get them.
Yes. So we've talked about them in the past. They both passed, I think it was in 2022, 2021, around there. But basically so Drusilla started exhibiting the issue first, her calcium sac. So a lot of geckos have what are called calcium sacs, and it's either like on their neck or like leopard geckos have them like under their armpits. And if you are supplementing too much calcium, like with leopard geckos, sometimes their calcium sacs can become really enlarged. And so, but that's with leopard geckos. So I wasn't sure if that was the case with satanic leaf-tailed geckos, because they are, and this is a species that is really hard to find people who have a lot of experience with them because they're such like a rare, unusual species. And so I had taken her in because one of her calcium sacs had become really enlarged and like discolored. It was like a darker brown than the rest of her skin, and so, or scales or whatever. And so I ended up taking her in, and they wanted to drain the calcium sac. And also, just to throw this out there, I had also reached out to some satanic leaf-tailed gecko breeders as well, and had been reassured by some that as it was kind of growing, this breeder had told me, like, I just have some that have naturally big calcium sacs and they live full happy lives and it's a non-issue. So I did know that there was like a chance of that. I just went in with like an abundance of caution, and this vet did want to do a surgery to drain it. And so they drained it and they tested what was inside of it, and they couldn't really come to any conclusive answer of like what caused it or what it was, or if it was an infection or what the problem was. And so I thought that everything ended up being fine. And then a few months later, she ended up still passing. So obviously there was something underlying. And then the same thing happened with her sibling her mate, Draco. So something similar had happened, but his bulge that grew was not in his calcium sacs. It was actually in his hemipenes. So that tells me it was some kind of like infection that was going on that ended up, it kind of showed up in different areas for both of them, which was interesting, but I never really got answers there, unfortunately. Yeah. But that was a crazy process, because if you know anything about satanic leaf-tailed geckos, they are like
very small,
teeny tiny. Like my vet actually, and this is a vet this vet has tons and tons of exotic animal experience, and she told me that this is probably the smallest animal that she had ever done surgery on. Aww. And so, which is crazy. And so they just went in, they did a little teeny tiny incision, drained the calcium sac, sewed it back up with one stitch, and afterwards I did have to like put little medication in there. I just took a little syringe and flushed it out every day for about a week or two. And she seemed to be recovering, seemed to be doing fine, but then eventually passed away. So I'll never really know what happened there. And I do feel comfort knowing that, you know, I got everything. I did the best I could, and I did what I could. I mean, that surgery was not expensive. It was not cheap. Not cheap, I'll tell you that. But it was worthwhile. You know, even I got her for another, 4 or 5 months after that, and it was worthwhile. But that was also just a crazy experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then other vet story time, we've brought this up a couple times. Charlie, speaking of like leopard geckos, he's had his magma extraction. Is that like,
I don't know if that's the right word. Basically, we've
removal.
Again, the reason I didn't immediately bring it up, we've talked about this in a recent episode. He's getting older as leopard geckos, and some geckos get older. They clean themselves a little bit less efficiently. They kind of struggle to get down there and clean themselves out. And so his hemipenes became the technical like veterinary term was that he had impacted hemipenes, and that's just kind of becoming an every other year occurrence now. Is it builds up, and then I got to take him in to get it cleaned out. So
did you want to bring up Taz with his poop?
Dude, I have so many vet stories. I literally forget. This will be the last one. Thank you. I forgot about that one too. So Taz had these weird poops over and over.
Taz is her scaleless corn snake.
Thank you. We're both trying to be better about me in particular, because I have more species, but we're trying to be better about making sure we tell you guys the names of which of our animals and the species. But Taz is my scaleless corn snake. He, a few years ago, this was actually probably, I want to say this was in like 2020, I think, but he had these weird poops that looked like eggs. I'm not joking. They were like these weird little like round oval shapes, and it was like a string of them, and it was so weird, and I immediately freaked out. I was like, this has to be a parasite. This has to be something crazy going on. And so I took him in, and they like did the fecal. They tested everything. They didn't find anything. She did throw out there, she was like, I am a little bit nervous. It could be crypto, which is one of like the most terrifying, bad situations. But it ended up being a non-issue. And again, we never really like got answers there, but he's perfectly healthy and fine and growing and doing all right.
I would say with poop, because people are like, this was a weird poop. And I was like, this is my rule. One weird poop, I don't worry about it.
Yeah.
2 weird poops, I keep an eye on it and then start to look about doing something, because at the end of the day, it is poop.
Yeah.
And it is,
sometimes you just like eat something weird and it's a little different,
You gotta go through the digestive tract and whatever else.
And I will say, when it comes to weird poops though, sometimes it can be a temperature digestion thing. So that's always like possible too, but it just depends on how they're digesting it. And so again, I never had issues with it again. It was just kind of like a weird occurrence, and we went from there. But that was my only other one. So that's actually the only, that time and when I took Hazel in for her little scab are the only times that I've ever taken in any of my snakes.
I had a memory pop up.
What?
It was Apollo at the emergency vet, and he had like what was probably a little piece of poop or like sperm sticking out.
Yeah.
It was like right in his little slit that chameleons have, most reptiles have. And this was also during, I think, 2020, so I wasn't allowed to bring him in. And so I had to bring in my Christopher Parsons chameleon, which was like a pretty big chameleon because he's a male.
Yeah.
And I had to go to the emergency vet because the regular vet didn't have any appointments. And if you didn't know, emergency vets are way more expensive.
Way more.
Than the regular vet, only for me to tell them that they like got it a little bit moist and were able to just like pull it out and it was nothing.
Well, so very similar.
Hundreds of dollars.
Yeah. No.
I'm like, what?
No, it's crazy.
I overreacted big time.
Well, but that's the same thing with like Charlie's little smegma thing. The first time I took him in for his smegma issue, he did have to be sedated and like it actually extracted to avoid like the potential of him dropping his tail. But the second time, the most recent time that I took him in to get that like extracted or removed or whatever, it popped right out.
Yeah.
So like,
no, I definitely overreacted. I mean, in hindsight, if someone had DM'd me a picture of that, I'd be like, what's the issue? But like, I would rather be safe than sorry.
No, that's me too.
And prolapses are literally life-threatening with reptiles, depending on the severity of it. So I thought it was like potentially a minor prolapse. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I gotta take him in. And so it was a whole thing. It ended up being like nothing. But I'd rather that.
And that's how
the
I
other
am.
Way around,
because with Charlie's smegma thing, my vet, and I know I've said this in a past episode, so apologies for being repetitive, but my vet has told me many times, she's like, if you want to try, and I'm like, no, absolutely not.
No, I probably, in hindsight, probably could have taken little tweezers and just gone blink, and it would have been like, it was so small.
But that's a learning curve. That's part of the reptile journey.
I was like probably 3 years into keeping. Like I was so green and so new and like had very little experience with like health issues. Yeah. This is a benefit to being like so many people reach out because I've seen a lot.
You've seen everything.
I've seen a lot of stuff. So I can anticipate and understand because I not only live my own experiences, but through other keepers as well.
Yeah. So. Yeah. No, you've witnessed a lot in that regard. I've witnessed a lot, just what I've personally experienced and been through. Obviously, I like forgot one of them. There's just so many, but that's kind of just goes with it just goes with it.
Kind of like weird things.
They're all weird.
Like, came up.
Yeah.
So.
But I feel like it's similar with dogs and cats too. Like I'm the first one that's going to be like, oh, I'm going to go run to the vet. Like I'd rather be safe than sorry.
Yep.
So it's worthwhile. This is why you should always have a vet on hand, build that relationship, make sure.
A budget. Because have some money set aside in case of emergencies because it does add up quickly. And the last thing you want to do is like not be able to ride your animal care because of the cost associated with it. So like if your financial situation allows for it, like try to squirrel away a little bit if you can, just in case. Cause
even $100 will make you feel good and be able to take care of you if you really need it. So it's better to have something than nothing is the way I look at it.
Absolutely.
Well, that pretty much wraps up all of our vet story times. And
there is a lot of them.
Quite a lot. And that just goes with the reptile keeper journey. And we hope that nobody has as many crazy experiences as we have, but we would like to hear yours too.
Let us know because we want to know.
Yeah.
Because we're nosy and
also,
we want to know.
Literally, somebody please tell me like the craziest vet experience you've had or the craziest like situation you've had with your pet that you've needed a vet for. Like, let us know.
You can always learn from each other, but hopefully this was helpful for you guys. If nothing else, entertaining, but hopefully educational as well, so you can hear from our experiences. And then maybe one of these happens to a reptile. Fingers crossed it doesn't.
Yes.
But then you won't feel so alone. And then be like, hey, I remember when that happened to Lyssa or Neptune or whatever. Yeah.
So always here to help. Always here to hear all the crazy stories. And we're super nosy, but that is going to wrap us up. Yeah, never any shame. I will always be nosy. But I guess that wraps us up for today. So do us all a favor and check us out on all of the channels. We are the Wild Type Podcast everywhere, and you can follow me everywhere as well at Lyssa's Lizards.
You can check me out, Neptune the Chameleon.
And we will see you girlies next time.
Bye.